Teacher, Let Your Light Shine community, we have a wonderful, glorious interview with a very precious former teacher that I know many of you already are familiar with. Kayse Morris, who is a previous middle school English language arts teacher before she shifted paths. She is the founder of the CEO Teacher, an online program that helps teachers turn their teaching skills into an online income by creating and selling resources, courses, or offering coaching. Kayse hosts the CEO Teacher podcast, a show aimed at teachers interested in building online businesses, earning extra income, and or transitioning out of full-time teaching. Kayse, welcome to the show. I know that you're going to be able to give such wonderful golden nuggets to our audience of teachers.
I am so grateful that you invited me to be on the show. Thank you so much. We were chatting before this and I said, I haven't done a podcast interview in probably 2 years. So I might be a little bit rusty, but I'm ready. I'm ready. And so thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I think that as teachers, we just have this natural gift of being able to speak and to share the story. So I think that we may ourselves feel rusty. It's like the time that you get up in front of your class and you haven't taught in a long time. But I know regardless, we're so grateful. I was just listening a few months ago to your last podcast that you had recorded in September. I had shared with you that when I was leaving teaching and not really knowing where I was going to go, what I was going to do, that your podcast really did help me. It gave me strength, it gave me courage. And I know that that is exactly what so many of our listeners need today. Many of our listeners are in a place that you once were, overwhelmed, but knowing you were meant for more. And in September, you had even the last couple of podcasts you had put out in September, you had mentioned feeling as if you were meant for more. Can you take us back to that moment where you began realizing that teaching wasn't the only way that you could make an impact?
Man, last night I actually got to go to the school that I used to work at. My boyfriend's daughter was doing a play, and so I got to walk the halls of my old middle school that I used to work at. And
Oh,
I kind of felt reconnected with that feeling again of wow, like I can't believe that I don't do this anymore, but I knew I was destined for something else. I just didn't know what it was. And so I don't even know that I could put a word on it or a feeling. I think that it was kind of like this habitual yearning over time and not even something that I thought could be realistic. If you would have told me 10 years ago what my life would look like today, I would have laughed and said, no, you're lying. There's no way. There's no way it's possible. And so all I can say is that you know in your heart, like I loved teaching. I loved being an eighth grade, sixth grade ELA teacher. I enjoyed the students. I enjoyed the kids. Those are the same thing. I enjoyed the parents and I never went to work just like absolutely hating what I did. I don't believe in living your life that way, but I just kept thinking to myself, I feel like I could be able to help more than these 118 students that are in my classroom. I feel like that I'm called to do more. I'm a Christian by faith, and I believe that teachers have a specific gift that they are given innately, and one of those is just being able to talk to people and communicate. And so, how could I use my God-given gift in a bigger way? And I struggled really bad through postpartum depression. I had a baby when I was a junior and senior in college, getting my teaching degree. They are 12 months and 11 days apart, not on purpose. And I went through some of the darkest days of my life to date at that point, at 22 and 23 years old. Broke, no money on government assistance, trying to become a teacher, teaching first grade, student teaching, not getting paid, crying every day in my car. I was not enjoying teaching then. I knew then that I did not want to be a first grade teacher. But power to all of those first grade teachers. I have a first grader right now, so I understand that it's a difficult challenge, but I just kept thinking to myself even then, like, man, there's got to be something more to this. And so I started teaching, and the spark was there, and I loved it. But a couple of years in, I just started feeling like, man, this is not what I thought it would be. This is so much. I'm giving so much to all of these children that my kids have nothing left of me when I get home. I'm not a good mom. I don't feel like I'm doing a good job in the classroom. And so that's when I started looking for help online from other teachers. And I wish I could hug the neck of those teachers that I paid a few pennies to, and they gave me their lesson plans for me to teach. And it brought my joy back again. And it made it a lot easier. So I wasn't spending all night lesson planning to teach the next day. And so that's really when my journey of how can I be of service to more teachers in the way in which these teachers helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say that that's the only way I got out of postpartum depression. I think it was a lot in my life to get over that hump. But when I found my business in 2013, everything changed for me. And it's been so beautiful ever since then. And I forget sometimes just how lucky I am. And so listening to you chat and do that intro, I'm really grateful today to be able to kind of take a look back and go, man, it's been such an easy and gift. I feel like God's given me a gift in life.
Yes, and thank you for sharing about that dark time of your life and the beginning stages of teaching. I definitely resonate. It was my first year of teaching whenever I became pregnant with our daughter, and it felt very scary, very overwhelming, very lonely. And it was actually after I had my daughter that I had, as much as I had loved teaching, I started honestly redreaming what it would be like to be a teacher because I knew at the end of the day, and I was trying to come home and keep my head up and breastfeed her and be a good mom to her and still do the lesson plans on the weekend and grade the papers and have the parent involvement and the awesome activities that you have for your students. I thought, I don't really have much to give back to her. And what if I could teach her, like still keep my gift of teaching, teach my daughter, and be able to teach other kids, but do it differently, right? So it's like we never wanted to leave the community that we have built with people who are like-minded. We have an innate gift, as you mentioned, that God had given us. And there's just certain shifts in our life and very monumental time periods where we feel this nudge and this call. But I'm sure that, like myself and many others, when you did know that you were meant for more, but you felt terrified to start, what do you believe would be the first step that someone should take? They know they're meant for more. They're scared to take that first start, but there is a step that they could take. What would you say that that could be?
I'm going to say something that I don't think people might put enough importance on. And I have been through highs and lows in my life. Recently, I've been through another valley. I would say the hardest times in my life were postpartum depression, and I went through a divorce 2 years ago, equally as difficult. And I know now without a shadow of a doubt that the reason why I've been able to overcome those really difficult times was through the habits that I created. And those habits, it's crazy how one day you don't do, like, you're not doing things well, like eating well and exercising and praying and all of that. And then it's like when you lock in on those main things first, everything else in your life falls into place.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that that is your foundation. And when things get difficult, knowing that you have a routine and knowing that you have these habits to fall back on, it's this beautiful like cushion of no matter what happens, I know that I'm still this person to my core.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I started in the classroom when I thought, man, this is something that I can do. I thought I would like to look to people for inspiration, that I want to model what I'm thinking about. My best friend and I started doing 80-day obsession, which was a beach body workout, and we were walking 10,000 steps a day, and we were eating good and counting calories. And she's still my best friend to this day. We still do fun stuff like that. But that was part of what put me in a really good headspace of like, I need to plan things out, and started planning out even more. I was like, okay, well, now that I've got this figured out, let me add something else to my plate, which doesn't feel very heavy. And I started listening to podcasts every single day during my planning period. I would actually grade papers like in the morning or whenever I could, so that during my planning period, when we didn't have meetings, I would escape out the back door and go to the track, because we were at a middle school, and I would listen to Amy Porterfield and Pat
Yeah.
Flynn and Jenna Kutcher, and Tony Robbins, and one of my favorite books is Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And I started
Yes.
I just started filling my mind with this sort of energy that I didn't have inside of me yet, but that I wanted to create. And I just think that's the secret to life, is that when you center yourself around positivity and goodness and all of those things, I do believe in energy and how it works. You have no choice but to radiate that back to people. And so, again, this has kind of been a nice reminder, because I haven't done a great job of doing that. But lately, I'm reading again, and trying to just educate myself and picking up new hobbies that are becoming habits. I say that like habits are very difficult. My favorite book ever is, besides the Napoleon Hill one, is Atomic Habits.
Mhm.
And I used to, Atomic Habits by, I'm not sure the name, but I read it every year at the
Yes.
beginning of the year. And it's
Really?
such oh my gosh. And I'm going to start it now, so that way I don't have to wait till the new year. But it's
Yeah.
just the best thing about teaching you how your brain connects habits, and how habit formations start, and the science behind why, when getting your habits in line, everything else falls into place.
Mhm.
And I started CrossFit about 5 years ago, which I love, but I hated it to begin with. And I got a nutrition coach, and she said, Kayse, right now you hate this, but one day it'll just be what you do. And
Mm.
I think about that all the time. Same thing with my business. Like right now, you're stressed, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what's next. But one day it's just going to be something that you do. Like it's might be in the beginning, figuring it out is going to be difficult, but eventually it'll become a habit, and it'll just be what you wake up and do every day. And that feels really good to know that no matter where you are, you can start right now by building really good habits. And that's why I think that these influencers that wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning are doing so well. People are so intrigued by a life like that, and they can't fathom how people can live like that. But then they realize that they have all of this success, and they start changing their ways too.
Oh, I tell you, I feel like this whole podcast could just be about what you just discussed, because it is so foundational and it is paramount to success. One thing that you were mentioning was how you really took what you needed to do, grading the papers, lesson planning, but what you also really wanted to do, which was to learn and to move your body. And I remember when it would come down to state testing the last couple of years, whenever I was in public school, when those state testing times would come, I felt as if everything that I had stored up in my brain, I was just able to release. And you're walking around the classroom for several hours, right? As your kids are taking those standardized tests. And so you have this free thinking time.
Mhm.
And honestly, as a teacher, you really don't feel like you have that much time to think freely. And I noticed a pattern that every standardized test season, I felt my best at dreaming and pondering what a life could look like beyond the classroom. And I dove deep into personal development, as you had mentioned. Definitely the same podcast that you were listening to. People that are, you feel light years ahead of you.
Yeah.
You're listening to them, you're like, wow, they may be talking so many things over your head, but you're just like, you're immersed in their success and in their calling. I too had read Atomic Habits, and I'm so grateful that you told me that you read it every year, because I have not read it every year. I've only read it once. And Kayse, as you're talking about some of the hardest times of your life, I'm connecting it to something that our podcast listeners have heard me talk about, which was we thought we were going to lose our micro school that we have about 100 students with. And that feeling of losing something that you have created And I know that you are connecting it to your personal life. It feels so scary. And my husband had went full in on immersing himself into our micro school. He left his job. We both run this school, and we thought we were going to lose it. I did not anchor in to my habits. I felt as if I was kind of in survival mode. I would wake up in the morning. And I'm even thinking to myself, man, the 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when I'd wake up and I'd have the zest for writing out all the things we were going to do in our school, the dreams that we had, starting the podcast to teach other teachers how to do this, starting the blog. I had so much energy, so much passion. And now I'm in a valley. And all I can do is sit in my bed with my hot cup of coffee with no thoughts, just the stillness.
Terrible place for someone that has a creative brain.
Yes.
Very sad. I have struggled with depression since postpartum, and I think that what got me through those times. I didn't mean to cut off your story though, because you were doing a great job.
No, I'm know so many people because we're all going to go through hardships.
Yeah.
And and you definitely want to make sure that you're not berating yourself if you are feeling depressed, if you are feeling anxious, if you are feeling helpless. We need to be able to talk more about it. And that is something that I'm very, very grateful that you're sharing with our audience.
And I used to get so down on myself that made the spiral worse. Like if I
Yes.
laid, I'm not, productivity defines me as a person. And so if I'm not productive, then I feel like a loser. And that's crazy
Yes.
to say. But if I'm laying in the bed, I'm like, I've lost the day. I've lost the entire
Yes.
day. This is even more depressing, but I'm not
Mm,
capable of getting up and doing it. And that's where those habits like lock in of just force yourself to go for a walk. Making my bed has made such a big difference because I won't crawl back in it. That's my safe place for when I'm depressed. It's like crawling in my bed.
right.
And just trying to get as much sunshine as possible, but really just anchoring into those. My mom said at Thanksgiving, I was talking about the last 2 years of my life, and I said, I just feel like I've wasted time. I've wasted good time with my kids where I was sad and I wasn't present in the moment. I've wasted happy nights at home when I should have been in a better mood. And I was just chatting about like, I'm just grateful to hopefully be on the other side of that. And my mom was like, you have to really give yourself grace. And there is such a grieving process in really big, large valleys, right? She
Mhm.
said the death of her father. She's like, he's been dead for 10 years, but it took me 2 years to be able to think again and to not
Mm.
constantly think about him. And, I think that that's real. And I think that that is something that we have to, but what I do know is that new beginnings can also propel you out of a dark season. And so if you find something that sets your soul on fire again, run at it 100%. I believe that that's why my business was so successful was because I was so ready to get out of that sadness of postpartum depression that I was like, I'll stay up all night. I'm excited about life. I don't even want to go to
Right.
sleep. And so that's really fun. And there's other things in life that can bring you that sort of joy that don't have to directly correlate with making money. Right now I'm making refrigerator magnets and that's so much fun. So figure out something that you can do that does not include scrolling on your phone.
Mhm.
And just find a little bit of joy in every day to kind of get you through until the next season starts.
Sure. I was also listening to a couple of podcasts, and everything ends up aligning when it's the right time. And it's all in God's perfect timing about the power of hobbies. And my coach had said to me, Makenzie, what are your hobbies? And I was like, we just pour ourselves into what we're passionate about as teachers, and then you build the business, and then you've got the kids, and you're busy doing all of the motherhood task. That I thought, I don't have a hobby, and I want a hobby so that I can feel inspired. And so, thank you for sharing about the refrigerator magnets. I think I'm going to start scrapbooking for my daughters, and I love organizing. We bought a new house, so I was working through, just establishing new hobbies, new patterns, new habits. And I really do appreciate you saying locked in because it was just a couple nights ago. I was like, okay, I have got to get locked in. I've got to start taking more accountability for my schedule and productivity, Kayse. I'm right there with you. I love being productive. I love being organized. I love feeling like I'm in control and I've got a plan for the day. And when the rug gets swept underneath your feet and you're just laying there and you know, I have so many things that I could be doing, so many incredible things that would make me feel well, but I just don't have the energy. I think in that moment, as you said, it can feel very scary. It's very hard for a creative person, but thank you for taking us back to the atomic habits because while it is hard, it is also just so important that you have either a podcast that you're listening to or a book that you are reading to help pull you out of the pit when you can't pull yourself out of it.
And I think listening, so for me, like my thoughts, I get ruminating thoughts. That's the heart of my depression. I think it's the devil. It's just like every single thought is like I'm going, it's a ping pong ball all over the place. And
Yes.
I've got, 12,000 compartments in my brain and they're all firing at the same time. And so like reading for me, I can't read. Like I can't concentrate on words. So I
Mm-hmm.
listen. I can listen when these thoughts are in my head and I need to get them out. And so that's why books were so important for me. And I made it a point to, if I'm listening to a book, I have to be walking. That was back in the day. Now it's, I have to be doing like housework. So like if I'm folding laundry, if there's ever a moment where I need some motivation, then I do that. If my kids are acting crazy and I'm cooking dinner, like I'm going to be listening to some book in my headphones. So that way I can, I don't know, maybe that's disassociation, but sometimes you just need to put yourself first for a second and say, okay, what can I do right now in this moment that's going to make the next hour even better? And so I think about that a lot, but yeah, it takes baby steps though to start quieting your brain over time to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get back on track.
When you said you couldn't read, it's interesting because I thought I would always wake up in the morning, and you talked about this on one of your episodes in September. You said you had been really into the Word of God for a long time, and then you stepped away from it. And it's not that you didn't love God, it's not that you weren't a Christian anymore. It was that you couldn't even focus, like you said, on the words.
Yes.
And Kayse, you said you had went to Blue Sage, you got yourself a Bible, you got yourself the highlighters.
I love you so much. Yes, 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 yes.
And because I'm like I'm into it. I'm thinking this is the girl that I have felt. I know what that feels like. And you're like, all right, I'm gonna get the new Bible and I'm gonna get the new highlighters and I'm going to get myself in position. And you know what I really appreciated? You said it still took me a couple of months.
Yeah, it did. You can't flip a switch like that. And it lasts. I don't believe. My boyfriend and I talk about this a lot. Like we can say we're going to be on an eating plan, but until we start baby steps in different ways, the switch will flip, but it will only
Yes.
flip if you take constant action towards it. And so it's like going to your first CrossFit class. It is horrible. No one likes it. And then over time, it becomes what you do. And you go,
Yes.
you know what? I'm going to feel better when I go. And the switch flips. And so
Mm.
it's the same thing about getting back into the Word of God. It is difficult to do. And if I can't read, if my brain's not focused on that, then I am obsessed with a pastor, Philip Mitchell out of Atlanta, Georgia, 2819 Church, and he just gets me like fired up, and so I'll listen. If I'm having a bad day, I'll just listen to him. And then it's just it depends on your learning style for sure, but depression is just one of those things that I don't think is talked about enough when people can't concentrate or they can't get out of bed and like they don't know how to define it, but it does matter, and you are allowed to live in those moments, but not stay in those moments. And so one of my goals for my future life is to not live so high in the highs and so low in the lows, but to find some really comfortable place in the middle where
Yeah.
I can just I can just coast. and feel safe. And that's my
Yes.
goal for the rest of my life. And hopefully, I can make that happen.
We are coasting and we are feeling safe. And I am so honored that we have been able to use today's podcast to share about mental health and for you to use your voice, Kayse. Many people, millions of teachers listen to you and have been impacted by your life. I am just so thankful that you are sharing behind the scenes. I believe that people are connected and they are truly blessed by your story. I will also say that not only was our school going through a super hard time, just even internally within our school, and glory to God, I know you feel this too, that He sustained us. He sustained us through the valleys. And He says in His word in Psalms, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It was about 9 months ago where I looked at someone at our school and I said, I honestly think for the first time in my life that I have been battling depression. And so many people, this is the 6th year of our school, 5 years of podcasting. I've never shared that with anybody. And I don't know how or why specifically. I mean, there was just a lot coming down in the moment, but I can honestly say I'm so grateful because many people will look at the success of someone and think must have been easy for them.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it wasn't. It wasn't easy. And even stepping out in faith, building the school, I cannot even believe through some of the hardships that we have gone through, how God has continued to sustain us and bless us in obedience to His calling.
That is, I needed to hear that today.
Yeah, thank you. I also think this is a very powerful segue into money and sustainability because so many teachers will say, I cannot leave my retirement. I cannot leave my 401k. I cannot I cannot leave my health benefits. But I want out so badly. I can't even imagine replacing my salary, let alone surpassing it. And I remember I held on for 2 years being like, I only have one more year left and I'll be invested in retirement. And I left the year before my retirement was ever even matched or solidified. But God has blessed us in that obedience. How do you help teachers rethink what is financially possible?
Whatever you believe and whatever you speak is true. So if you believe that you can't leave your teaching job and you can't leave your retirement, then you're right. If you believe that God will sustain you and that it'll all work itself out, you're right. And so, I made $32,000 a year when I was a teacher, my first year teaching. And I went back and I got my master's degree and then I got my specialist degree, all for a grand total of about $48,000 when I became a teacher, in year 8. And I left the classroom and I was doing really well on Teachers Pay Teachers. And that was my only goal when I left the classroom. I actually promised myself I had to make $100,000 on TPT before I would leave. And I did. And I was still scared. I was still like, there's no way this is going to work. And within 8 months of me leaving my teaching job, I had a new idea and I launched this program. And in the first hour, I made more than my teaching salary. In 1 hour. I was 9 months pregnant and I hit my knees. I was eating a cookie. My life changed forever. And so to hear that story, I understand what you feel. And I can only say that I felt it too. But I had enough knowing in my heart to believe that there was a reason and a purpose for what had happened, and something, even if it wasn't money, was going to really bless me and my family. And I think that that's the key there, is that when you focus on money, you're actually just pushing it away. And I was talking about energy earlier. And so I read this book called Dollars Flow to Me Easily. And I was like, oh, okay, this is so cheesy. But it's like everything in life, when you learn to like let go and let God. One of my favorite, I keep going. I have a lot of favorite books, if you can't tell, but Michael Singer writes a book about the untethered soul, and he did
I
this.
read all three of them,
Oh,
Casey,
and the
by
surrender
him.
experience. I've read the untethered soul like 10 times. I'm obsessed with Michael Singer.
Yeah, and he has got a great podcast, but that
He has a
definitely was
podcast.
so, he's got a podcast.
I know what I'm doing the rest of the year then. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to. And then so the book The Untethered Soul basically is about letting go and letting God. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
then he takes it a step further in his next book called The Surrender Experiment, and
Yes.
he basically gives you every situation in his life in which he surrendered, in which he let go and let God. And
Oh.
so that's what you have to do in
Mhm.
order to find success, is that you just have to have this knowing. And when you get quiet and you listen to what God has for your life, he's going to tell you. For me, and people might think I'm crazy, I believe that I can clearly feel the way that God is choosing me to go in life. And I'm not always in agreement with it. I'm literally
Right.
not. But I just feel that there's this knowing that, okay, like this is what's next for me. And so like I said, I don't always agree with it, and sometimes it's very, very difficult. But you just have to just go for it. And that was a long-winded answer, but maybe I've given everybody some good books to go read that'll help
Yes,
them too.
for sure. And I was actually just coaching someone last night who is running her micro school, and she so badly needs to step out of teaching while being head of school. That's a hard position that we all face as we are trying to build a school and transition ourselves to head of school. And I told her, I said, the number one priority that you have right now as you are building and scaling this school, we have to get you out of the classroom because you can't think right now. You can't, she said, she was talking about teaching middle school, and she's a phenomenal person, phenomenal teacher. And she was saying that as she's teaching middle school, she's got to be thinking about how she can take this person, immerse them into the culture, teach the way that she's teaching. And I was sharing with her how I had said one night as I was watching our students move after a banquet we had, and all of these parents and all these kids at our school, and I'm like, wow, God, we were just in our living room a few months ago. I really need to surrender this to you. And I said it, but I didn't really believe it because I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't surrender. And when I didn't surrender, everything got harder and it constricted. But yet I thought that surrendering was going to be the hardest thing. But holding on was truly the detriment for the position that I was in. So I was really just sharing with that teacher, we have to surrender this and trust that the next person who comes in, it is going to be just as great, if not better, because right now you're really not at your best because you are so constricted in your thinking and you're teaching in the classroom. And then as soon as you get out of the classroom, you're also thinking about marketing and budgeting and hiring and all the systems and the processes. So when we talk about surrendering, a lot of times we don't surrender until we are completely burned out.
Hmm.
Would you want to share a little bit about your burning out experiences?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many of those. I'm so in line with you when you say that you surrender, but you don't let go of control. And an example, so in my business, similarly to your teacher that you were talking about, not leaving the teaching position to go to where she needs to be, which is the head of the school. I was doing everything for the business. I was checking the emails. I was responding to every Facebook message. I was responding to every DM. All of these tasks that I literally haven't checked my email in like a month. Like the team messages me and is like, Kayse, go make sure you look in the inbox for this.
Right.
These were all these things that filled my day with productivity, but they didn't allow me to truly, really surrender. So I hired two people knowing in my heart that I wasn't really surrendering, right? I was going to be very, very on every single thing that they were doing, and I did. Those two people quit within 5 minutes of each other, not long after, probably about a year into the business. And I was like, oh, there's the proof I needed that I needed to do it all on my own. And there was this beautiful angel that had just started with us, and she was just barely working part-time. And I called her and I was like, I need your help. And she said, I'll help you as long as, and she had a list of things that she needed from me, which most of them required me to let go and let God and surrender. And she's been the best blessing that's ever happened to me, not only in my business, but also in her walk in her faith and who she is as a person. She's our integrator, Allie Elliott. She's one of my best friends. And I'm just so blessed. But that's a true example of like, there are so many times where you almost validate your beliefs by creating situations to make sure you whatever you believe is true, right? And so whenever you're just trying to get past that, you just have to really look for like, am I truly giving this up? Am I truly surrendering it like I need to? And it's just crazy how it always works itself out. And you mentioned there is a scripture in the Bible too that talks about like the timing of things, and when the time is right, then God will make it happen.
He will.
And so you just have to remember that it might not be your time right now, but or it might not be the time you think it is right now, but you have to move yourself into the direction of what you want to.
Yes. And speaking of moving into the direction, there's this component of visibility. So, Kayse, you live in the town that you were teaching in.
Yes.
So, with visibility comes this vulnerability of stepping out, and everyone's like, but you were the teacher and you were my child's teacher. And now what are you going to do? And where are you going? And now you're like, you're leaving us and you're going to go pursue something different. I hear a lot of the time from teachers, I'm really scared to put myself out there. I'm scared of what people are going to say, what they're going to think. Can you talk to that person right now?
I actually posted about this on Instagram yesterday. There's this trend that is like, it says on there, like in your 20s, you'll do this, this, and this. It's important that you do that. And so I posted in 2015, I uploaded my first YouTube video. I look and sound ridiculous, but it's important that you do that. Like I wanted to make sure, because that really changed a lot for me, was when my YouTube channel took off in 2015. And again, those videos are painful to go back and watch. My Southern accent was so thick. I was using chipmunk voices, and I was definitely putting myself out there. And it's funny the confidence that I had then compared to even now. Like I worry so much about what other people think about me now. Because I am divorced and I live in my hometown, in the same place. And like everywhere I go, I feel like I'm being judged. And so it's been a very difficult road for me the last 2 years to step into, no, this is just who I am. And I think it's kind of similar to when I started my business. I think it took me about 2 years when I wasn't embarrassed anymore. When I would go to Walmart and someone would say something like, oh yeah, I saw your video on YouTube. And I just would laugh with them. I was like, yeah, I know, it's funny, isn't it? Like I would just kind of give them that thing. And then I didn't really tell anyone about building my business. I was very quiet about that. I posted about it on social media, but I didn't talk about it in my day to day. I didn't talk about it with my friends. I just, I just did it on the side and didn't know if anything would ever come of it. But, there's this beautiful like joy. And when I left the classroom, everyone at Walmart would say, but how did you do it? There's no way you're making enough money to like replace your teaching salary. And it's like this little bit of like, if you only knew,
Right.
And I would say, yeah, like I'm more than happy to help you. Like, let me see if I can teach you. We can meet up for coffee or something like that. And so, it's funny to everyone until you become a success. And then they think, oh, well, we knew all along. And I'm sure I still annoy a lot of people in my hometown, but, my kids' friends think I'm cool, which is really all that matters to me. Their high school friends think I'm cool. And I have a social media following, they say that they get street cred for that. So, at the end of the day, if my kids are happy and proud of me, then that's all that matters. And I know that I'm making a living supporting them. And you just can't, you know, and that's so cheesy to say, but the people that are, on the field with you are doing the things that you're doing are never going to talk bad about you. It's always the people that aren't doing what you're doing, that are
Hmm.
not kind, that are the ones talking bad about you. And would you rather just sit in the teacher lounge and listen, or would you rather just get out and do something different? And
Yeah.
that's the encouraging part, is that, I don't want to be that person that sits around and makes excuses. I want to be a different version of that.
Casey, you work with a ton of teachers, a ton. And you have got to see the whole landscape of education changing, teachers getting to create so many resources to adapt to the changes in education. What do you think what strengths make teachers the best? And I do believe we are the best entrepreneurs in the world.
Oh, same. I tell teachers that all the time. And even people in like pharmaceutical, I have people in my life that sell pharmaceuticals, and so they are always like, "Hey, if you ever want to come sell, like just let me know." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I have a teaching marketing background." They're like, "It doesn't matter. That's what we're looking for," and it's because of this like personability. That's not even a word. It's because of our ability to relate to people and to just
Yes.
be like, "Hey, when you're a teacher, you get to know the kid, you get to know the family, you get to figure out what they need from you, and you kind of work with them to make something beautiful, which is their learning process. And you get to be with them the rest of their life in some sort of capacity. I was at a store the other night, and I saw the kid that made me want to quit teaching. I saw him, and he was like Miss Morris, and I looked at him and I said his name, and he gave me a big bear hug. And we were talking about his tattoos. I mean, he's grown now. He's like 25. And I thought to myself, in that moment, he was the reason why I wanted to quit. But now, like, I've gotten to like, he remembers me and I remember him. And like, it was like a beautiful time in life, right? Where he annoyed me and I annoyed him, but now he's a grown up. He's got 3 kids. And so there's just gonna be times where it's like that. But I don't even know where I was going with this at this point. But what were we talking about? Because I was rambling.
No, I think that you are right. You see those students and you're like, wow, I was at a very pivotal time and it felt rocky and it felt shaky, but goodness gracious, here we are today. And you have still maintained a fabulous rapport with this student. And yes, teachers do best entrepreneurs. I'm sure you see this in your masterminds program, the qualities about them, the relatability, and and I also think their tenacity.
Yeah, the whole idea of being a lifelong learner is instilled inside the mind of a teacher. And I think that in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a lifelong learner. And so it's just always what's next, which is fun to me as a person. And so teachers are always asking that question, especially in our mastermind, is what's next? What do we have coming down the pipe next?
Yes. Okay. And this is such a wonderful opportunity for me to ask you when we are thinking about what happens, what's going to happen next, scaling, growing. So you started your business, you stepped out, you were able to not only compensate for what you had been making in public school, but you had also now surpassed it. You were growing, you began scaling. I'm sure that was a hard time. That's a hard time for all of us. You have a 16-year-old, right? Do you have two 16-year-olds now?
I have a 15 and 16-year-old.
I'm sorry, but this is just, can we talk about motherhood and business building and teaching with teenagers?
It's a lot. It's a lot. Teenagers are a lot. And
They are.
I thought toddlers were a lot, but 15 and 16 has been probably, it's been very, very trying. Thank goodness I scaled my business before this part, right? Like I figured out how to do it, because it's here, there, everywhere. It's they both have jobs and they go to school and they play sports, and it's a lot. But scaling my business was the one of the smartest decisions that I look back on and go, I'm so glad I did that, and I encourage everyone to do it as fast as possible because I
Mm.
waited too long.
Wow. That's really good to hear because you will, and myself as well, waiting to scale because just waiting for the perfect conditions. And honestly, we were just holding ourselves back.
Yeah, it's like my mom used to say, there's never a right time to have a baby. Like you're never like making enough money. You're never at the perfect point in your life. Like you're never ready. No one's ever ready to what happens. And so it's the same thing with scaling your business. Like you just got to do it. You just got to say, this is the time and this is how I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. Casey, I would like to close this out by asking you the change that maybe you have seen teachers going through over the past several years of coaching and running your online business. What do you feel has been some of the most trepidatious times, some of the most challenging times, and how have you been able to help teachers through that?
You know, I felt like in 2020, teachers should have been at their worst, and they weren't. I think that they were at their best. 2020 will always go down in my mind as such a resilient year for teachers, where I feel like, got to step into their purpose again, which is teaching in the way in which they wanted to, because everything was so new and nobody knew what they were doing and who was going to lead the way. And then since we've gone back to regular teaching and in the classroom, I feel like teachers are a little deflated again. And, you know, if you live in the States, what's going on in the world of politics and congruency of education, not that I'm judging either side, it's just been a lot for teachers to hear about every year, to read, try to figure things out. And so I think that 2020 is just a testament to where teachers need to be focused, which is trying to always innovate what's going on, at least in your classroom, at least in what
Mm,
you're doing. And I don't believe that you should stick to a group or float the mainstream when it comes to that, because, like I said, you were born with a gift to teach. And that looks very different for every single person. And I think the happiest teachers, they pretty much keep their blinders on and they push forward in the way in which makes them happy. And I think that that's the key.
that is very, very beautiful. And I feel really spot on. Whether they are creating their own learning environment, whether they're creating their own resources, the way that they're growing, the way that they are changing. Casey, where can people continue to learn from you and grow with you?
Yeah, please come on over to Instagram and you can follow me there at Kayse Morris. We also have a CEO Teacher Instagram that we post some of our business stuff on. You can go to my website, kaysemorris.com. It's about to be completely rehauled for 2026. And hopefully we'll be kickstarting the podcast back up again. We took a little bit of time off after about 8 years to kind of refocus and recenter, but we'd love to have you. And we have a book, Start or Expand Your Online Teacher Business, and you can find that on any of our socials or on our website.
Oh, Casey, I'm definitely a fan of your podcast. No pressure, but when you do get it back up and going, I will definitely be listening and sharing some things that I'm learning from you on the podcast here. Teacher, Let Your Light Shine. We are going to be changing to Redream Education, and I think that you are definitely a spokesperson for people who are redreaming education. And I think until that podcast gets going again, we have 8 years of podcasts to be listening to for people, and it is all still very, very relevant. You helped me 6 years ago as I was stepping out of the classroom. And there are so many micro school founders who are starting Teachers Pay Teacher stores. They need help with how to brand and how to sell and how to market. And you've done such a beautiful job of this. So thank you, Casey, for your gift to the world. Thank you for stepping out in faith. And thank you so much for the time that you dedicated to sharing with us today.
Makenzie, thank you. This has been a blessing to me. I love a hype girl, so thank you for hyping me up and for giving me some encouragement to just keep going.
Absolutely. We'll be seeing you soon, and I'll be connecting with you and connecting our audience. Bless you, Kayse.
Bless you.